In the previous video, we went through how to download the iris datasets, and I hope you found it useful and been able to actually execute the same task yourself. So in this video, we are going to move into data exploration as well as analysis using the iris datasets that we have already downloaded earlier. So earlier, I used the example of using CMD to start the command prompt. Under Windows, there is the Windows PowerShell that you can also do likewise. It's exactly the same. So we're going to do activate. Activate our iris project. And the only problem with using this screen is that I can't see that it has been activated. So let's try. So I need to switch over the CMD. So activate iris project. And now you can see that the iris project has indeed been activated. So we're gonna cd into documents now. And iris project. And okay, we are in our working directory now. For this purpose, for this project, for this video, I'm going to use the Jupyter Notebook. The notebook directory is just going to be the current directory that I am in. We will start afresh, and we call this the iris project. Okay, and we just give ourselves the iris project. Okay, and we're going to give it the second heading, and we'll call it data exploration and analysis. Okay, some basic things that we do need to do is that we do need to import a couple of typical standard library, NumPy. We're going to make use of pandas as well, and we are also going to import Seaborn. NumPy is a numerical Python, pandas is a data frame. It's extremely powerful for data analysis. Seaborn is actually a visualization tool. We're also going to import matplotlib, pyplot as plt as well. That's really, again, a visualization tool. We're going to set our just play some settings. Code is equal to true, and finally we're gonna plot our chart matplotlib inline. Okay, as panda. As it's running, it shows a star. Once it's actually finished running, it shows a 2. Let's import our dataset. I'm just going to call it data frame. It's equal to the beauty of using pandas is that you can just read the CSV and iris.data. That was our file name. Okay, so let's see if it's been imported successfully. We're going to read the first 5 rows of data, and the first thing that you notice that something is not quite right. You notice that the headings is actually in the form of the data itself. So it looks like we need to re-import this and change it to the headings. Okay, so how do you actually import that with the understanding that the first row is actually already your data rather than a label? So we're gonna use the pandas .read CSV and just show you how to actually do this. Header, we need to actually change the header portion, so we're gonna change that. First of all, we do need to actually specify .data. Okay, so it requires an input as 0. Okay, -1. So it requires a -1. So now that it's -1, then it's imported correctly. Now the first row is actually the data. Okay, so now we're gonna store this into our data frame. PD read. Okay, and we're gonna just show the header. And notice that it's been imported correctly. That's not really satisfactory, however, because quite often we want the actual label to be done correctly. Right now, what do we need to do? We need to actually go back to the actual data set itself and have a look at this and look at the so-called labeling. So you can see the first column is the sepal length, second one is the sepal width, petal length and petal width, and finally the class itself. So this is what we can do, is you can column names, come over here, and we just can copy and paste this over and store this as a list. And just repeat for each and every one of those label. Fortunately, someone has already done this exercise for us, but I'm doing it the hard way because quite often what you will find is that a big part of your job, when you actually, before you can even start the data analysis itself, you do need to actually do this exercise. So, okay. Now, one of the beauty of using the Jupyter Notebook is that you can actually tab and scroll through the list of different names, different so-called properties that you can actually change to. So let's see if this works. df head, no. Okay, right. What you can see now is that you can see that our column headings has been labeled properly now. You have sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width, and finally the actual class itself. Having done all that, I'm gonna leave that. That's really to show you that a little bit of the data cleaning. I'm just gonna import the iris dataset directly from the Seaborn database. Now, the reason is that, as I mentioned previously, the iris dataset is very popular. So a lot of these libraries has already preloaded these data onto their so-called library so that you can actually quickly make use of and start your analysis. So I'm going to call this iris, and using the Seaborn, which already have the so-called dataset imported. So I'm gonna load that and view this. Seaborn also preloaded it as a pandas data frame as well. So as you can see, what you have is that sepal length, sepal width, petal, so all of those are exactly the same as the label. It's just that the iris dash has been tidied up, some of the data has been tidied up. So what we want to do now is just do a quick analysis. Counts, nope, describe. The datasets that we downloaded has 150 entries. So let's look at the one that is actually in the Seaborn database. It's also 150. So for all intent and purpose, the datasets are exactly the same. There's some slight variation in terms of the sepal width. Other than that, the petal width is also slightly different as well. The beauty of using pandas is that you can actually use these so-called shorthand method describe. You can see that the sepal length has a mean of 5.8. The standard deviation also 0.82. The mean is 4.3. the max is 7.9, and you can see basically the actual general so-called data description. This is a really quick data exploration exercise just to actually get a feel of your data. Notice the range are quite different. The petal width are actually quite small. So when you're actually performing analysis, there may be a need to actually start to normalize this. I'll come back and explain normalize, what normalization is, or min-max, scaling it in future video, but this is just to actually get you appreciation of the fact that the data range, scale, or size are different, so it's going to have an impact on your analysis. So it's almost always a good practice to actually normalize your data automatically. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is just print the actual data set, the so-called iris info. Let's see if there's any info that's been stored. Okay, there are some info being stored. So there's 150 entries. There are multiple columns. So the first 4 that we looked at, well, there's 150. These are float. The last one is actually an object. And we want to just also have a look at we've already analyzed the 4 so-called continuous variable, so which is the sepal, length, width, or petal as well. So we already know what they are. Let's have a look at the iris, and we're just gonna do a little bit of group by, and based on the so-called species, and we look at the actual size itself. Okay, so looking at this, we're grouping the so-called species type, and we can see that the actual size of these are 50 each. It's actually a pretty so-called even database that allow us to conduct our analysis. So for now, that's pretty much the end of this video. Before we move on, I'd like you to try this exercise yourself. Play around with the Jupyter Notebook and explore the iris data. One thing that you can do is, instead of printing just the head itself, the first 5, can you print the whole lot, look at all the data itself? Can you actually conduct your own standard deviation calculation? Just try this exercise. I'm gonna pause the video and let you actually play around with this. I would really strongly encourage you to play with it. The more you interact with the data sets, the more intuition you will be able to develop, and that will actually aid you further down when you try to actually conduct your machine learning or your modeling of the data, trying to find a way to represent the real world. That's really the whole intent of the exercise, is to get a feel of the data, develop intuition, and try to model it and also predict going forward. What we've done so far is just to perform a really quick analysis of our data, just to explore, get a feel of it. What kind of data do we have? Are we dealing with numerical data? Are we dealing with text? Are we dealing with strings? What are we dealing with? So the whole exercise here is to get a feel of our data, and always at the back of your mind, think of what are you trying to achieve here. So for now, we're going to stop this. In the next video, we're going to do some presentation or data visualization to actually get a much more in-depth feel of it. So at least for now, we have some range. We can see the range of our data. We can see the categorical data. What are we dealing with? We have 3 different data categories or flower types. And we're going to move on to a little bit more in terms of the presentation in the next video.